Let's talk about the Cory Sandhagen, Umar Nurmagomedov main event, which is going to be taking place in August in Abu Dhabi. This fight, of course, rescheduled. These two were supposed to fight last year, didn't end up happening, and now they've rebooked this fight. And this video is just going to be on the optics surrounding this fight, because I've seen a lot of different opinions about this fight being put together. Is this, Dagestani privilege? I've heard people say stuff like that. I've heard people say, nah, there's nothing wrong with this fight. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. I'll do a separate video on the fight itself and give you my pick and all that other stuff. My name is James Lynch. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And guys, I quickly got to mention again, sorry about my voice. I'm still not 100%, but I do want to get content out. I don't want things to pass by in the news and me not to get a chance to give my opinion on it. So that's why I'm doing it. So again, apologies for my voice. So let's talk first about the optics of this fight getting put together, and I'll get straight to the point. I don't have a problem with this fight. I think it makes a lot of sense. I've said this before on my live streams. Cory Sandhagen's in a bit of a weird spot right now. They haven't officially booked it yet, but it looks like it's going to be Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili next for the title, maybe in September, maybe not. But I think we can all agree Merab Dvalishvili has done more than enough to earn a title shot. He is rightfully the next contender in that weight class. So that leaves Cory Sandhagen in an interesting spot here. You can see Cory currently ranked in the division right now, number 2. He's the next man up. Does he want to wait around for the winner of that fight? Probably not. Cory's always been someone to fight no matter what the situation is. That's why he fought Rob Font, which is the original fight that was supposed to be Umar. So he fights Rob Font instead, and he just wants to keep the momentum going. And Cory's, one of the things I give him credit for, I've done a lot of interviews with Cory. He's like, look, I'm going to have to fight a lot of these guys anyway, so I might as well just fight him now. So Cory himself does not have a problem with this fight. And I don't have a problem with this fight either, because there's a couple things about Umar that I think make it interesting. Number one is that Umar Nurmagomedov obviously has that last name, Nurmagomedov. There's a lot of hype behind him because of what his cousin Habib has accomplished in the UFC. There's also, Daniel Cormier, all these other people just raving about Umar and the skill set. And you see that in certain fights. There's definitely a lot of talent there for Umar Nurmagomedov. So I think people want to see, is he the real deal? We hear a lot of fans talk about him being a future champion. If you get by Cory Sandhagen, you definitely have the makings of a future champion. So I think from that perspective, it's fine as well. Some people don't like the fact of the ranking, the fact that Umar, currently in the division right now, ranked number 10, fighting a guy who's number 2. But the thing is, I think it speaks more about Cory and keeping active than it does about Umar jumping the ranks or whatever. And let's talk about some other opinions for Cory Sandhagen as well, who he could fight. Some people suggested Dagestani Figueroa, who just fought at UFC 300. I don't know if he wants that quick of a turnaround. Does Cejudo want to fight Sandhagen? I wouldn't mind that fight, but Cejudo doesn't seem really committed. He already beat Chito Vera. You could do Piotr Yan that rematch, but I don't think, that could be a better option than fighting Umar. But again, I don't have an issue with it. Cory says he's fine to fight. So again, I don't have a problem with this fight, and I don't think it's Dagestani privilege. I think what the privilege is, if you want to talk about anything, is business privilege. Let's talk about that. I don't think Dagestani privilege exists. I think business privilege exists. It's the same reason why Colby Covington got a title shot against Leon Edwards. Whether you like it or not, the UFC viewed Colby Covington as more of a commodity to fight in a title fight on the last pay-per-view of the year than they did Bilal Muhammad. I don't make the rules. That's what the UFC felt. That's why they gave Colby the shot. In this case, this card is in the Middle East. They typically have Muslim or Dagestani fighters on the card, right? That's why Chimaev's fighting in the Middle East, right? He's Muslim. They want to have a Muslim for the crowd there. Same thing here with Umar. So no matter what, Umar was going to be on this card. It's now a matter of finding him an opponent, someone that's willing to fight him in the Middle East. And we've heard stories about fighters turning down Umar. Again, I haven't seen any proof of this, but let's take his word for it anyways. If he's as good as he says he is, he should be beating Cory Sandhagen. So I've seen some people, for example, Hopero MMA, who's been doing a lot of really great work. He has, why do Dagestani fighters get so much privilege? Now, he basically just discusses this in the video. And one thing we've learned with Dagestani fans, Muslim fans, they don't take criticism very well. If you read the comments in here, people are basically flipping out about him even suggesting that there's any sort of privilege. Now, I don't agree with him that there's a Dagestani privilege. Like I said, I think what it comes down to is UFC is about making money. And if they can make more money having Muslim fighters fight in the Middle East, then they're totally cool with that. So I don't think it's Dagestani privilege, but you even criticize any of the Dagestani fighters, they're coming for blood. I've seen it firsthand just from picking a fight, right? So that's how people feel as well. But one of the videos I wanted to address was a video that MMA Joey made. Now look, before I get into this, because people on YouTube are really weird. I've seen people try and pit Joey and I together. All I'm doing is discussing what I disagree with on Joey in this video. It's not me attacking Joey. It's not me coming after him saying he's not smart or anything like that. It's just me disagreeing with him here. So that's what we're going to do. And Joey, if you're watching this or anyone from his channel is watching this, I would love to debate Joey this topic because I think he's wrong about this. And I would like to go through some of the points that he makes here and give my own points to it as well. So we're not going to watch this whole thing. It's 30 minutes. Let's talk about some of the stuff that Joey addresses here and I'll give my thoughts on it as well. But the title of this video is Xenophobic UFC Fans Hate on Dagestani Fighters with a False Narrative. So he's basically implying that the reason that people are upset with the Umar Nurmagomedov fight is because they are xenophobic. That's what the title reads, right? Am I missing something here? Sorry, you can't see it with the logo, but that's basically what it says here. Xenophobic UFC fans hate on Dagestani fighters. And this isn't the first time Joey has implied that there's some sort of discrimination or racism against Dagestani fighters. He's done a couple of videos on Bilal Muhammad. He talked about his Islamophobia, why fans don't like Bilal Muhammad. I disagree with that too. But let's talk about this video here.
Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. People are screaming, number 2 versus number 10? How could this happen? How could the UFC do this? Well, first off, we're going to have to act like the rankings actually mean something. So we'll get to the rankings a little bit later in the video, but we're going to act like the rankings actually mean something, even though they don't. Number 10.
Well, okay, I'm going to interrupt him here. Well, on the one hand, I agree with you. The rankings, the UFC doesn't follow them in a lot of different cases. We could go through fight by fight where the rankings are irrelevant. But he's saying here the rankings are meaningless. His whole argument of why Colby shouldn't get a title shot over other guys. And by the way, I didn't think Colby should have got the title shot either. Bilal Muhammad should have got the title shot. Let's be clear about that. But he's saying that the rankings are meaningless here. But he did a ton of videos talking about Colby not having a ranked win. So if the rankings don't mean anything, why does it matter if Colby has a ranked win or not? Just wanted to point that out. And again, I'm not hating on Joey. This is just something we disagree on.
Versus number 2. There's no possible way that this has happened before, right? There's no possible way this has happened in recent memory with...
There has. He knows this. Joey, you know this. Come on, man. You know that there has been fights where someone has been ranked low and fought high. I get what he's doing. He's trying to play this up a little bit, but of course we've seen fights where the rankings don't make sense. And he's going to give some examples and we'll talk about those examples.
What about number 1 Piotr Yan versus number 11 Sean O'Malley? Keep in mind, Sean O'Malley only fought basically scrubs up until that point. Okay. Where were the people complaining about that? Huh?
There was a lot of people complaining about that. There was, including myself. He said that Sean O'Malley hadn't fought anyone good prior to the Yan fight. That's not true. He fought Pedro Munoz, who's has been a ranked bantamweight for a while. That fight ended in a no contest. Now that whole situation, I think I did a video on this, or at the very least I talked about it on my live stream. I talked about that being BS. They should have just done the rematch, but you know the UFC likes O'Malley, so they obviously didn't care about the results of that fight. They didn't do a rematch, right? We saw a rematch with Ankalaev and Johnny Walker when there was a weird stoppage there. No rematch in the Munoz fight. And then O'Malley keeps telling the media and in interviews that he beat Munoz. He didn't beat him. It was a no contest. And it was a fight where Munoz actually looked good in that first round. I know this because I was at that card. I was covering that live. So when he fought Piotr Yan, there were absolutely people that didn't want to see that fight because they were like, you just came off a no contest. How come you get to fight Piotr Yan after this? So I got to push back a little bit on that.
Even more recently, you have number 3 Dustin Poirier versus number 12 Benoit Saint-Denis. Where was the outrage there? Everyone loved that fight. You have number 12 versus number 3.
Okay, a couple things about that though that he's missing. Poirier was coming off a knockout loss against Justin Gaethje. At the time when he lost to Gaethje, there was sort of a school of thought that Dustin's probably done as a contender, right? I think a lot of people felt that way, right? So it's not the same as Cory Sandhagen coming off a couple wins and fighting Umar. Again, I don't have a problem with Umar and Sandhagen, but you're saying that people weren't upset with that fight. It's a little bit different when Dustin Poirier is coming off a brutal knockout loss and Poirier's how old now? He's what, 35, 36? That's a lot different than Cory Sandhagen, who's not as old as Poirier and who has not fought, well, he has fought for a title, but Poirier's 35. But again, a little bit different optics. And look, I'll give him this. A lot of people were not outraged by that fight. But again, for business, let's look at the business side of this. Benoit Saint-Denis, the UFC goes to France all the time. It's become a market for them. There's a guy they're trying to build up. Let's be honest. Who did the UFC want to win that fight? They wanted Benoit Saint-Denis to win that fight. He's younger. He's exciting. Benoit Saint-Denis has been finishing all of his opponents. He's looked great. Saint-Denis was finishing his last 3 opponents, including Thiago Moises, who at one point was ranked. Frevola was ranked at a point too. So again, this is not the same as Umar and Cory. It's different in that he finished all these fights and Poirier was coming off a loss. If Cory Sandhagen was coming off a stoppage loss, like if this was Umar fighting Cory Sandhagen off the Aljamain Sterling loss, then I 100% agree. But it's not the same thing, Joey. So I disagree with you there. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, what about number 4 Sean Strickland versus unranked Alex Pereira? What about that? It wasn't a big deal when Pereira fought Bruno Silva to get a shot at number 4 Sean Strickland.
Different situation. Pereira had a win over the middleweight champion at the time, Israel Adesanya, so they were obviously pushing him ahead. And again, for business, they got this exciting kickboxer who, as we now know, has a huge following, fighting Sean Strickland. Pereira is any other fighter. If he didn't have the win over Izzy in kickboxing, no way he's getting that opportunity. So again, the optics are a bit different. The thing that Joey's doing here is he's talking about every situation as being the same as Umar and Cory Sandhagen, but it's not. There's other optics that are involved that he's not mentioning.
There was no outrage there. Oh, wait, no Dagestani fighter involved. Oh, you want to go to a more recent example? Oh, what about the champion Alessandro Pantoja defending his title against number 10 ranked Steve Erceg?
There was. People were like, how is Erceg getting it over Mokaev? But then everyone kind of realized, okay, Mokaev didn't have a good fight in the fight with Perez, so they gave it to Erceg. Again, that's a completely different situation. We're talking about the flyweight division where it's completely wide open. Bantamweight's got lots of available fighters ready to fight. I get where he's going with this, and he's trying to tie this into that people are just hating on Dagestani fighters. But the reality is he's leaving out a lot of context here, which I think is relevant to a lot of the examples he's giving.
Sean Strickland got a title shot off of beating unranked Umar Nurmagomedov. Nobody complained about that either. It was no big deal. Sean Strickland.
Who was Adesanya going to fight in Australia? That was the whole, it was supposed to be DDP and Adesanya. They had committed Adesanya to Australia. Who else was going to fight him? Jared Cannonier would have been the only other option. DDP wasn't ready. Strickland had a win. Again, it's not that, and there were fans that were like, how is Strickland getting it? There was some blowback on that, but how people looked at it was like, who is available? So the thing that he's leaving out here is the timing. Umar and Sandhagen is in August. They had plenty of time to find Umar an opponent. So that's kind of what's being left out here in all these arguments. So, and then there's a part here where he brings up Movsar Evloev, who I will agree with Joey that I don't find him boring. I thought that fight against Arnold Allen was great. But the fact of the matter is, Movsar Evloev has not finished a single opponent in the UFC. So if fans want to call him boring, is that really the worst thing in the world? It's got nothing to do where he's from. It's the fact that he hasn't finished an opponent. You don't think that doesn't deserve to be criticized? Come on. So this is what Joey talks about with Evloev here.
18 fight win streak is called boring by Dana White. Okay, Dana White shit on his fight against Arnold Allen, which by the way was the second best fight on the entire main card. It was a great fight. And fans crap on him and say he's boring, he doesn't find finishes. I can't even remember a boring Movsar Evloev fight. I can't remember a single boring one, but people crap on Movsar Evloev, oh, because he's from the Caucasus region.
They don't crap on him because he's from the Caucasus region. You're making an assumption there. They're crapping on him because every single one of his UFC fights has gone the distance. He hasn't had a finish since 2018, since before he was in the UFC. That's a fair criticism. But to say that people are saying it because he's Dagestani or because he's Russian, I think is pretty unfair. And I think it creates this narrative where you're going to have these Dagestani fans think that everyone's against them because of who they are. That's not true. There's no evidence that you've shown that, like I'm showing evidence right now of why fans would call him boring because he hasn't finished a fight. And I don't agree with it, by the way. But to say that they don't like him because he's Dagestani, I think that's a big stretch here. I think that's Dalzim stretching from Street Fighter, if I'm being honest.
Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira 2. Oliveira got a little bit of heat for pulling out of that fight. Could you?
No, not a little bit. He got a lot of heat for pulling out of that fight. Okay, everyone said he was scared, that he did it on purpose. They're like, "Why are you sparring a week before your fight?" As if fans have any idea how a training camp works. That you can't downplay that. Okay, Oliveira got a ton of hate for that, and I will agree with what he's about to say here. That the fans that say that Dagestani fighters pull out all the time, that's nonsense too. A lot of fighters pull out for a variety of reasons. So I'm with them there, but I don't think fans are targeting Dagestani fighters, and if they are, it's such a small minority of people.
Over time, since 2018, you have a lot of these fans who were casuals, who were brought into the sport by Conor McGregor, who just hate the Dagestani fighters now. And they just want to.
This is a really big assumption, and I think there's actually a problem with this. I'm not saying this doesn't exist. I think there are people that you can find that are extremely critical of the Dagestani fighters, but I think it's such a small pocket. I think it's the same people who don't like Aljamain Sterling and don't like John Jones, not because of certain things they do, maybe because of the color of their skin. We want to go down that route, but that's kind of what he's implying here, is that all the Conor fans don't like the Dagestani fans because of who they are. I think that's a really big assumption without a lot of evidence there. So that's basically the summary of Joey's video. I wasn't going to go through the entire 30 minutes. I just disagree with him here, and that's why I'm doing this video. I'm not hating on Joey. I want to be clear about that. The one thing though I'll say is that this title of this video says xenophobic UFC fans hate on Dagestani fighters. There's no evidence of fans being xenophobic. Joey says that fans don't like Evloev because he's Dagestani, but there's no proof of that. I gave you an example of why I think fans find that Evloev is boring, because he goes the distance a lot. But you can't just make an assumption that every fan who doesn't like a Dagestani fighter is discriminatory or racist. And I think it goes into kind of, not good territory if we're going to start talking, making fans out to be discriminatory or racist or anything like that. I think that's where we get dangerous. I wouldn't have not put this title in here. If you want to say that fans aren't being fair to Dagestanis, that's fine. But saying that fans are xenophobic, there's not a lot of evidence to prove that, and he didn't really prove that in the video. And again, Joey, if you're watching this, let's debate. I would love to talk about this topic, but you have not given any examples of fans being xenophobic. And here's the thing that I think gets lost in Joey's commentary on this, and I think the Dagestani fans. They act like they can't be criticized. I think there's a couple things you can criticize about this fight. Why does Cory Sandhagen, who's ranked higher, have to go to the Middle East to fight Umar? I don't think that's fair. I really don't think that's fair, honestly. That's my position on this. They should do it in the US. Cory's the higher ranked fighter. He's proved more in the division. He should be the guy that gets to choose where he wants to fight. He shouldn't have to go and fly over and fight Umar. In fact, when we did our interview, Cory's like, yeah, I'm not fighting in the Middle East. So I'm assuming they gave him a lot of money to take this fight, but there's no reason why Cory, who's the higher ranked fighter, should have to go fight Umar. The other thing is, I think it's a fair argument if you want to talk about Umar jumping up, the same way I think it was fair that if you wanted to criticize Petr Yan and Sean O'Malley from fighting each other, jumping up the rankings. Kind of the point I'm trying to make here is that Joey and the Dagestani fans, some of them, they act like this can't be criticized. I think there's plenty of reason to criticize it. I don't agree with it. I don't think Dagestani privilege exists. I don't have a problem with this fight. But there's this idea that you can't criticize anything about a fight like this. And I think that's kind of wrong, if I'm being honest, because you can't just say fans are xenophobic, that's why they don't like this fight. No, they don't like it because Cory shouldn't have to fight in the Middle East. Umar's fighting up the rankings. I think those are valid criticisms. But I don't have a problem with it. And I'm actually really looking forward to this fight because look, if Umar's as good as they say he is, then he should beat Cory Sandhagen and then he's probably going to win the title. That's what I feel like. And I think this is a great test for him. The same way Benoit Saint-Denis was a good test for Dustin Poirier. People talk about, it was too much too soon for Benoit Saint-Denis. He almost beat Dustin Poirier in the first round of that fight. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's good matchmaking. I don't mind seeing fighters skip the line a little bit if there's a lot of potential there. That's kind of the point of this video. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Joey? What do you think? I know there's going to be people in the comments who are upset with what I said and think that, I'm ignoring any sort of discriminatory stuff. I don't like people being discriminatory against anyone. I don't think you should judge anyone based off where they're from or what they believe in or anything like that. But I also don't think people are immune to criticism. I think people are fair to criticize this matchup. I just don't think it has anything to do with privilege. And I also don't think the fight's that bad. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.